Hey there, my name is Anthony Romano. I'm going to tell you in this video how to finally get rid of cellulite and essentially how to avoid getting cellulite ever again in your life. Now, this does require work, okay? It's not a magic fix, but I have a lot of reasons I'm going to throw at you that can explain more about why people get cellulite, even though it's not necessarily something that scientists have nailed down, but there's a lot of leading theories that I've looked at, and I've been waiting to release this video for a long time because after all these years, I finally feel like I know more about how to get precise with eliminating cellulite. Because most of the time people will just tell you, oh yeah, exercise more, eat less processed food. No. I'm going to tell you the specifics of what you have to do, and I'm going to make it simple as well. So the answer, right off the start, to get rid of cellulite for good is the ketogenic diet. Now, you might not have known there are certain benefits that will get rid of cellulite specifically from the ketogenic diet. And there's certain ways that I'm going to explain to do it, the certain little things you have to tweak about it to make it so conducive to getting rid of cellulite. But I'm first going to explain the mechanisms of what we know about cellulite and what actually causes it first, okay? And once I explain that, the reasons why keto is the answer will become glaringly obvious, okay? So by the end of this video, you will understand why keto is such an important approach to getting rid of cellulite and keeping it away. But first, I'm going to explain the theories behind cellulite. So the first thing we know is, there isn't a clear-cut answer on what causes cellulite. There's a lot of theories, and I will go over them. But the general perception most people have is that it's genetic, it's a byproduct of just gaining too much weight. But those are wrong, okay? It's not necessarily genetic. There's no, you didn't just get the cellulite card in the genetic lottery. It's not just that you gain too much fat, because people who aren't even that overweight have cellulite, and that's probably even yourself if you're watching this video, or maybe you're watching it for the benefit of somebody else, or you're a coach or something, and you know people who have cellulite despite not being super overweight. Now, of course, there are very obese people who do have cellulite, but it's not only those people. So those are the main theories that most people believe. And I will add in that, even though I'm about to explain why keto is the best route to take, that doesn't mean that, losing fat in general any other way isn't going to work. It's just that it doesn't have the specific benefits that I'm going to explain. So, hey, if you can just put your head to the grindstone and burn as much fat as possible through any means, then yeah, you're going to get rid of some cellulite. So that's one way. But the solution I'm pointing you to here is keto, and then put your head to the grindstone. And, there's a lot of other benefits that come with keto, but doing it will have specific benefits for removing cellulite. So we don't know exactly what causes cellulite, but we do know what it looks like. So if you take a look at this picture here, this is what it actually looks like. There's a stretching of the collagen network, and you have these misshaped fats going on, and that creates the dimpling effect on the surface of your skin. So how do these misshaped fats get there in the first place? The main theories, like I said, the ones that you can throw out the window are, it's just genetics, that's why your fat cells are misshaped. It's just that you got too fat, that's why your fat cells are misshaped, right? Because not even people who are too overweight have cellulite. And those are the ones you throw out. The ones that I believe this is a balance between is hormonal dysregulation, toxin storage, / misshaped fats from certain toxin-like foods, okay? So misshaped fats, toxins, and hormonal dysregulation. Oddly enough, you can handle all of those three problems by simply doing a keto diet, as I'm about to explain, that avoids certain foods. And that is the best way to attack cellulite from a body fat perspective, because certain diets can't tap into fat storage the way ketosis can, whether it's achieved through fasting outright or ketogenic diet, which is probably the better way to go. But if you think about it, I want you to take a moment, sit back and think about this. when you've ever seen pictures of, black and white, the old days where there was, your ancestors, right? Or older people. If you've ever seen a picture of somebody who was overweight, they would not have cellulite the way that we see it today. It's far more prevalent today. It's never been written about in medical journals from thousands of years ago. It was never a condition people wrote about. It's something that is new. It is something that affects the modern day. And another thing that scientists do know is that it's probably related to estrogen. Okay, there's other work I've read from Dr. Susan Van Dyke that explains essentially, because this is so prominent in women, it probably has some relation to estrogen. Well, it does. It's just she's being generous by saying it that way. So essentially, when we're talking about, why is it created in the first place, it's because there is some form of hormonal dysregulation, right? Probably. And we also have toxin storage maybe as an avenue here. But I pull up this paper, which essentially is going to explain to you another role of your fat tissue that you might not have known. So the role of your fat tissue is not simply just a storage house for nutrients and toxins. It is as an organ. Your fat tissue is an organ that sends signals to your body about certain metabolic functions you should be doing. And not even that many people know that fat is partially a toxin storehouse as well, because it is meant to take toxins out of your bloodstream. So if you're consuming them, part of the main reason for cellulite as a toxin storehouse theory is that it's taking, your body would rather store those toxins as ugly looking fat than, having you die from them being in the bloodstream, or, obtain some sort of damage from them being in the bloodstream for too long. So that's kind of more of the fuel behind the, toxin theory. But I'm not necessarily saying that this is all the toxin theory or all the hormonal theory, but they play hand in hand. So we've looked at the cellulite diagram, we've looked at the toxin paper, right, that proves that it does function like a organ. It does receive signals and send signals, and this is well documented. But the other topic I wanted to bring you here to is obesogens. So what does this mean? Obesogens basically means stuff that will make you gain fat right away, independent of other factors. Okay, let's see what the actual definition is. The actual definition is, obesogens may be functionally defined as chemicals that inappropriately alter lipid homeostasis and fat storage, change metabolic set points, disrupt energy balance, or modify the regulation of appetite and satiety to promote fat accumulation and obesity. So that basically means it makes you get fat right away. So let's even take a look at some random images, right, that explain this, because I've read entire books on endocrine disruption and, estrogenic foods, estrogenic ingredients that can mess with you. And most of these ingredients are found in our foods, which, if you're eating a keto diet, as I'm about to explain, you're avoiding. So that's essentially the main way this keto is, solving the issue at hand here, because it's eliminating the stuff that could cause either the toxin-based theory or the hormonal-based theory. So I'm not saying, we don't know which one it is, one or the other, but your grandparents probably don't remember too many people having cellulite. Your grandparents or their grandparents, depending on how old you are, definitely remember a time where cellulite was less prevalent, because it's a modern thing. We know that, just applying logic to this, that it has some relation to estrogen and it's something newer. So what are we doing differently in the past hundreds of years? Like Google, 1800s overweight person, right? Fat person, whatever you want to type in, and you won't see cellulite the way we see it today. And I personally believe that it is as a result from a lot of the food sources that we're getting, and particularly from some of these obesogens. So you want to avoid those obesogens, and keto will inherently cut them out. So let's read through some of these. Even a general list here is pesticides, BPA, PFOA, phthalates, soy. The P in phthalates is silent, by the way. Soy, yes, soy, which is in everything. MSG, TBT, artificial sweeteners, not all of them, but watch my video on artificial sweeteners and artificial ingredients to learn more about these individually, because I have read extensively about these, antibiotics and PCBs. So essentially, there's a great book called Estrogeneration by Dr. Anthony J. And a lot of the stuff that I've read about some of these obesogens is essentially, the second you consume them, they will make you gain weight, and they will also boost your estrogen artificially. That's at least how a lot of them work. For example, soy. Soy is far more estrogenic than it gets, the glance at, the brush off the shoulder, the blind eye turn towards it. And 90% of the world's soy is genetically modified. So if you get some that is not genetically modified, I mean, that's better. Soy lecithin is like basically an emulsifier that they use in other products that is not as problematic if you get it from non-GMO source, but still, you don't want to have soy in high amounts because it has these estrogenic effects. And if you don't know exactly too much about estrogen, essentially estrogen is anabolic to fat tissue. So testosterone is anabolic to muscle tissue and catabolic to fat tissue when it's raised. So essentially, the purpose of estrogen, at least as far as scientists rationalize it is something that promotes weight gain so it can benefit child rearing. Okay, so essentially that is why women, when they're pregnant, they boost estrogen because it's their body storing more fat as fuel for a child. Men have it too, even though they don't have, child rearing capacity, but it's simply something that occurs in both men and women have more of it. Now, it's actually testosterone that's the big difference between men and women. Men and women actually have very similar levels of estrogen when a woman is just, not pregnant or on any other sort of, pills or anything, right, that artificially regulate things. But it's more so testosterone that's the difference between men and women. And men have a lot more. And when it comes down to estrogen differences between men and women have a little bit more and men have a lot more testosterone, to put it simply for you, okay? So a little bit of estrogen boost can even make men get cellulite, which is why, there's been old pictures that I've had maybe when I was more overweight where sometimes I would have a little bit of cellulite look, where people I know have this sort of cellulite look, but then they get, overweight again and they don't have it. And I believe it's coming down to foods that will artificially dysregulate hormone balance, particularly estrogen. So things like soy, right? I'm not telling you that you got to be afraid of soy and it's going to make you gain cellulite on the spot. That's not what I'm saying. It's just that soy and soy oil and soybean oil are used in almost everything, okay? So that's one avenue, because it's not just soy, it's a lot of these things. These pesticides, particularly glyphosate. So glyphosate is something that is sprayed on all crops and eventually fed to most industrial meat, depending on where you live in the world. And glyphosate, what it actually does is the gly in glyphosate it refers to the glycine molecule in glyphosate. So glycine is part of our natural collagen network. And when you consume glyphosate, I'm surprised I've never heard anybody talk about this for cellulite. I'm not a doctor who specializes in cellulite, but glyphosate literally becomes part of your collagen network when you consume foods that were sprayed with it, which is why there's so much, legal battle going on right now about this, which I'm not going to get into because I don't want my video to get pulled. Okay? But essentially, you can look this up, glyphosate and all the legal problems that's going on with it, because it literally messes with your collagen network. And this is an example more towards the toxin theory of cellulite. And when we're talking about regulation of hormones, there's also other chemicals such as atrazine, which is also getting into the meat supply and other foods, which literally can turn male frogs into female frogs. So because of this estrogenic effect. So as far as the estrogenic side of things, I'm not going to say definitively, oh yeah, it's this and this and this. But most foods contain these obesogens, especially foods that are processed, especially processed fats. So I also want to touch on processed fats because this video is going to leave you with a full-on approach to tackle cellulite specifically, right? In addition to overall body composition. I just need you to stick in here and watch the rest of this because I'm throwing you loads of tips here. So when we're talking about, the cellulite reducing properties of cutting out these obesogen foods, the best way to do this is by cutting out all the processed food, cutting out processed fats, which I'll explain in a moment, and in general go into a keto diet because it inherently removes most of these obesogens, okay? So let's go to processed fats. What are processed fats? Well, they are heated vegetable oils, seed oils, and these things are so rampant, it is ridiculous. I actually have, conversations daily with some of my coaching clients, and what I ask them to do is when they're at the grocery store, I tell them to send me pictures of food items or sauces or something that they're picking up. And For keto clients, it's mostly in like sauces and things like that, but the ingredients that are in these sauces to make it artificially taste better, or to have the bliss point, which you can Google as a term they use to explain, what makes the food taste really good so it's addictive. It's a combination of these artificial fats and artificial sugars, so processed. So the simple way is don't get processed food or minimize this. But, I have other videos explaining how to avoid these hidden kryptonites. But essentially, processed fats are unstable fats. They're basically fats that come from these vegetable oils, which are heated to a point where their chemical chain is unstable. So, if you think about unstable fats and you figure out that as of like the 60s or 70s, maybe a little bit before, probably 50s, because it came from a guy named Ansel Keys, making these more prevalent, or at least his work making this more prevalent, these are literally misshaped fats. They're unstable chemically fats. And these are the most problematic health problem in the world as far as I'm concerned. And, if you don't believe this, you can Google it. These are the most inflammatory food you can consume. They are the biggest cause of cardiovascular disease, mental degeneration, physical degeneration, and artificial fats and oils are closer to lab chemicals than they are actual food. And you can Google this. This is very easily verifiable, okay? I throw up, documents for, I don't physically throw them up. I place them in my videos. I throw up documents when I'm talking about, theories of metabolic reactions to toxins. But when I'm talking about things of fat oils causing loads of health problems, you can Google this and it's easily verifiable. So, vegetable oils, artificial processed oils are probably even more problematic than processed sugar. So processed sugar, on the other hand, I believe it's equally problematic, right? Because it's artificially spiked, right? Like high fructose corn syrup, things like this, to make the food addictive, and eventually consuming too much of it can make you gain weight. But I'm not as sure that it's tied directly to cellulite as processed fats are, okay? Because fats being misshaped and stored in the body is literally what seems to go hand in hand, even just logically, from the cellulite perspective. But I'm going to give you one more tip here, because there are a lot of other tips as to how to manage, misregulated hormones, okay? But the ketogenic diet is essentially something where you're eliminating processed fats as long as you keep those out. So you're not using the soybean oil, the canola oil, the rapeseed oil. You're not using those, okay? Because those are, like I said, the ones you want to avoid, right? We've all seen that experiment of, people leaving a jar of margarine outside, and it doesn't get touched by any living thing, and then you leave a thing of butter and it's gone in like a day. Not even flies go around the margarine, right? That's anecdotal, but there's a rhyme and reason behind these things. And I personally believe the combination of processed fat and processed sugar does create this misshaped fat, right? Because they're things that we would not have been chemically exposed to up until the last 100 years or so, okay? In processed foods in the, post-agricultural revolution. So that is generalizing things a little bit too much there, but I encourage you to watch my other videos on, kryptonite ingredients. These are the things that will get rid of cellulite, even if you don't want to just take the easy route and, go into a ketogenic state where you're not using processed fats, because you're cutting out all sugar, which is going to include the processed sugar from keto. You're cutting out inflammatory ingredients like gluten, wheat, proteins that most people have intolerances to, that go undiagnosed their whole life. And then from there, as long as you make the conscious decision to cut out processed fats, you are going to be on the right track to getting rid of cellulite. And here's one more tip I'm going to throw at you before I get into one more, hormone balancing tip. But this other tip is that if you are, turned off or feeling like this is going to be very difficult with a ketogenic approach, my absolute number one recommendation, that is a literal cheat code for keto, is to consume exogenous ketones. Now, I have links to them and all the products I support in my descriptions, but here's what, you can educate yourself more beforehand and watch my other videos on exogenous ketones. But essentially what they do is they put you in ketosis right away. They regulate your salt balance if you get a good one, and your electrolyte balance in general, which is what eliminates all of the problems people have with keto and the keto flu. Keto flu is basically sugar withdrawal. And, this gets dramatically easier to start, and you immediately get the hormone hunger, satiety benefits, appetite suppressing benefits, as in hormone regulation. It's going to increase your insulin sensitivity momentarily. And this is the only supplement that can affect your hunger in such a way by actually increasing your sensitivity to a hormone, insulin, which is a good thing. So in general, exogenous ketones are your cheat code, and use them to start this if you are getting into, a clean, natural keto diet that doesn't use any of these processed ingredients. And whatever food you do consume from this point on, vet the, ingredient section. This is very important. And that's ultimately what I want to talk about when I talk about sophisticated fitness, because everybody talks about, the macros, but it's not about the macros. It's about the food ingredients, okay? Not just what they add up to. So the last tip, okay, because this is a long video, but I'm trying to give you the most comprehensive approach on tackling cellulite on the internet, okay? And believe it or not, I'm shooting myself in the foot by talking only about keto in the title here, because I want this video to reach people who are struggling with this, and I want you to send it to them. The other tip, start doing some resistance training with weights, because this is what will have a tangible increase on your testosterone. There are other supplements you can use to kind of naturally spark your own testosterone flame, but these are not going to be as effective as, the benefit somebody who never works out gets from starting to work out. So there can be marginal increases from supplements, and they are well documented. I've read plenty of the literature on them. But if you can increase your testosterone, you are going to increase the catabolism to fat tissue. Like I said, estrogen is anabolic to fat tissue, and testosterone is anabolic to muscle tissue. And muscle tissue is metabolically expensive, so it inherently helps you burn more fat as you increase it, and you're also creating more muscle gain. So in general, the more resistance training you can do, the more you're going to up that testosterone, even if you're somebody who is a woman. You don't have to worry about, overdoing that. It's simply going to have a beneficial effect on you. Like I said, the main difference hormonally between men and women when it comes to estrogen and testosterone is estrogen is quite similar. Women have a little bit more different periods of time. They'll have a little bit more, but testosterone is the huge thing. So even if a woman does a load of freaking Arnold Schwarzenegger training, she's not going to get yoked. Well, she's not going to get overly manly, if that's what you're worried about. Okay, so that is it for cellulite. Cut out the obesogens. Cut out these hidden kryptonites. Okay, and I'm going to make other videos on these things as well. We don't know exactly whether cellulite is toxin buildup. We don't know if it's solely misshaped fats. We don't know if it's simply from overprevalence of estrogen, or if estrogen is simply something that is raised as a byproduct of having these obesogens. Okay, we don't know. But everything I've given you here is enough tools to fully get rid of cellulite. And look down in my description for free plans I have and other free and paid content I have to help you with this, because I even have free plans on there. So go get them, and go to my website if you want personal consultations for me to set everything up for you, because that's what I do. I set up personal action plans, and I also do full one-on-one coaching as well, if that's something you'd like to, discuss. Okay? So that's it. Leave me some comments, other questions, and I will do my best to get back to you. Once again, Anthony Romano. Subscribe, like, peace.